Cool, because I just started.
Oh, yay.
Or
Oh, you
because
got
I
ah,
tr- I try to start earlier, but I know you're sleeping.
nah, that's my fault.
You say that every Sunday.
Uh, that's up late.
You say that every Sunday also.
Damn.
Out of excuses.
Talking about,
Out of it. Yeah, out of it.
hmm, we got some interesting topics I see here. Yeah, I see. I slept too late. That's why. If I didn't sleep late, I'd have been up.
Yeah, we don't have to. Um, there's a
Hmm.
couple of these we don't have to go through, but if we do, we could just skim by them. But there's gonna be a couple of main ones here. But let's get this popping. Welcome back to the ICE podcast. Forgive my stretching. I Serad, he up top Sir Black, and we are here to discuss automotive news. Now, last week we did a whole our top five builds and top five YouTube builds, which is pretty fun. But now we gotta get back to the headlines. We gotta get back to it. First and
Yep.
foremost, we're gonna start off things here in America with the new Ford Ranger Super Duty.
Hmm.
Now, my question is why? No, seriously.
Um.
Why?
So, um, you know what? Because it's America. No, honestly, let me say what I have to say.
Go for it.
It has come a time where I hate to say it, where the Ranger is almost the same size as the F-150. It's still smaller. It's still a mid-sized truck, but it's gonna work for most Americans who don't want a full-size truck. Like, for example, I've always seen a lot of people, try to convert like the Dakotas into like a Ram or treat it like a Ram, or the S10 Colorados, GMC Canyon, or whatever the Sonoma or whatever they I think that's what they called it in the GMC side. They would
Mm.
use those as like a Sierra or like a Silverado. And the same thing in the Ford Rangers. You always had those memes like it's a Ford Ranger. A Ranger can do it. Like so, it's kind of funny that I think Ford just kind of leaned in onto that and just said, you know what? Let's give people a beefed up, hyped up Ranger that basically is going to perform like an F-150, but that way we can call it a Super Duty.
But like,
But it's kind of stupid because I know what you're saying. It's like, okay, you have F-150 and you have a Super Duty. When you need a heavy duty truck, that's what you get. It's stupid in America. There's got to make sense in other countries, overseas, if they sell this overseas. But I don't know
well, even
if
I'm pretty sure the F-150 sold overseas. No, that's what I'm
it
trying to
is,
figure
but
out.
but it is, but not in the markets where they have smaller vehicles. Or it probably won't do well, like sell well, because in those countries their roads are so small. But this thing's gonna work, and it's not coming to America for a reason. That's for the reason.
But
It's going to Australia,
so,
which mhm.
so I get that they're going to Australia, and more likely the market will thrive over there because of the way they do the American brands. But I don't know about tariffs. But my thing is this: it's a Ford Ranger. It's supposed to be like the Tacoma of the Ford brand, basically, right? I don't want to be too far off. Is that pretty much what it is? The Ford Ranger's pretty much the Tacoma of the Ford. the Ford brand.
Yeah,
There's
you
obviously
say that.
the Tacoma does have a TRD Pro, just like the Tundra is has a TRD Pro package type ordeal.
Hmm.
F-150. I feel like it just has too much going on with the F-150 that people would rather get the F-150. I don't see how I don't see how this will sell. Does this come with the V6 or the V8? Do you know? Right off rip before I search it up.
It's a good question.
And then
That's a
actually
good question.
the new F-150s come with turbo V6s anyway.
Yep, yep,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
yeah, it's
2.3
true. You're
liter
right.
four cylinder, 2.7 and 3 liter V6. Now F-150. Oh, so they still have the option of the V8 is 5 liter 5.2. I'm pretty sure that's the top trim ones, but there's a 3.5 EcoBoost and 2.7 EcoBoost. So that goes. Let me just click on this one. Five passenger,
Hmm.
gasoline, automatic, all-wheel drive, or four-wheel drive. Sorry. Um, I don't see no stats as far as that. So let's go back over here. Let's try the XLT 2024. What does this come with? 5 liter V8. So the XLT Black Widow supercharged. So that's top trim. Okay. So I wasn't far off. Top trim packages of the Ford F-150 come with the V8s, but your regular Ford F-150 prior to a certain year, which I like to say is 2020, 2021, 2022. I like the
Hmm.
vehicle details.
That sounds about right. The V8 was
V6
reserved for higher
3.3.
trims and work truck.
Yeah, so they had their whole mix of V8s and V6s, and now the top trims you get the V8, Black Widow, whatever it may be, whatever they want to call it, and then the regular Ford F-150 Super Duty is turbo V6. So now, if that's the case, why are we getting a Super Duty Ranger then? Because I rather, if it's really
Not for
cheaper
American
than
market.
if it's really cheaper than an F-150 Super Duty with the 3.5 V6, because I know these, like I just searched it up, the Ranger comes with a 3 liter version or a 2.7 V6. So the only thing the Ranger and the F-150 will share is a 2.7 liter V6, but the Ranger has a 3 liter, the F-150 has a 3.5. From the looks of
Come.
it, besides the Raptor, they're fairly affordable, and the Lariat's pretty pricey up there.
Hmm.
Let me just double check. But the all right, so regular cab. Let's do super cab since that's pretty much super cab, super crew cab. 44,000 at most. XLT is 36, so it is a cheaper option, but that's not. There's no Super Duty yet. This is with the Super Duty after. Let's say
Hmm.
Lariat will probably be the more comparable one, but still it's 43,000. I'd rather pay the what is it? The 44,000 for the F-150 Super Crew Cab. So just in pricing, specs, and all that coming together, I don't see why people will buy a F-150 Super Duty. What do you think? It doesn't make sense to me.
It makes perfect sense to me. Um,
Explain, because I can't understand.
so in a lot of these foreign countries, the Ranger or like a Hilux, a Toyota Hilux, which we didn't get here, which is basically like a Tacoma but beefed up better, kind
Of
of like how
course.
the Patrol and the Armada is. It's like the Hilux was always like the boom. You got every all off road goodies, all everything was solid.
Mm-hmm.
The Tacoma was like a little bit more watered down over here,
Mm-hmm.
like the Armada and the Patrol. But the reason why I'm saying that in those references is because they don't sell, I believe, F-150s in all these other countries. Only mainly the U.S. That's why like the F-150 or F series trucks are the main best selling trucks in America because they don't just label F-150, F-250 after as different. They'll just say they're all F series trucks.
Yeah.
Then unless they specify F-150, maybe it might be best selling for the year or something, whatever. Anyways, the Ranger in those countries, for example, when I was in one of my favorite destinations of Colombia, Medellin. All I saw was like Rangers and like Hiluxes and like the what's the Isuzu D Max
Yeah.
and those other little trucks. So they don't really have full size trucks out there. So it kind of makes sense for like markets that have smaller streets that are tighter because the our American trucks are massive. Like literally, they are massive. Like I was just driving my Ram the other day, and I was trying to make a turn, and I realized, man, like I've been so spoiled with the Infinity, how it can turn on a dime, and it's a big SUV. But
Hmm.
this thing was like I had to make like a 3 point turn. So like it's going to be hard to maneuver those trucks like on little land. So it makes sense why they're offering this and why they wouldn't offer this in America. Because look what I'm trying to think. Look, in the truck market, look at like okay, I'm gonna use some oddball trucks for example. The Cadillac EXT Chevy Avalanche.
Of
A lot
course.
of people who have them love them. But in the main truck market, it just didn't sell well because people were like, I want a truck, not a truck that is like half, like it goes into my cab. They just wanted it to
Half
be a truck.
SUV almost.
Exactly. What else? Another truck that didn't really sell. The Nissan Titan XD. The XD was a half ton, but almost a 2500. So it was, and it basically they beefed up the frame. It's the only reason why I kind of how do I call it? I defend the Nissan Titan a lot because it's so much stronger than what they say it is. But in the American truck market, people will overlook it because it looks just like a regular Nissan Titan. I mean, the same could have been said for years ago for like how GMC Sierras and Silverados, 1500s, 2500s, or even the Rams, 1500, 2500s, all look the same, had the same body until like recently, where like now they all started changing their bodies.
Hmm.
Hell, even Ford at one point they had the same body in the 90s, and they were like, "Hey, our Super Duty needs to be super," and they changed the look and distinguished the F-150 and the Super Duty. So for doing this is them really trying to, I want to say, get a foothold on the market before they lose it. Meaning they want to have the beefiest truck available. And now basically since the Ranger's back, I mean the Ranger was dead. It was in the graveyard. It
Yeah.
was in a cemetery, buried. So now that they came back, it's like they're coming back swinging where they're like, okay, we want to show everybody that the Ranger ain't nothing to be messed with. So it's kind of cool because, first they gave us a Raptor. Nobody thought Ford was going to listen and give us a Raptor, but they did. Now they're giving people a Super Duty Ranger overseas, which basically, just for the American market, is going to be an F-150, a Ranger with some F-150 goodies. And I think it's cool that they're trying to put 8 lug wheels on it, but I think it's also stupid. But you know what?
But then it's
Let me
like,
see. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. I think that's stupid because, I mean, it doesn't have to carry that much weight. But I think you'll see overseas soon people with money putting big wheel, like relifting these and putting those
oh, of
big
course
wheel rigs on
they're
it.
gonna
I
go
mean, big
bananas with the
wheel tires.
customs. They're gonna go bananas with the customs. But
Yeah,
I still I get what you're saying. The problem with me is there's still the option of an F-150. That's my issue with this.
not in those markets. In America, yes. So I try to tell you, over those seas, you cannot get F-150.
But you just said earlier that the Raptor is the size of an F-150. I mean the Raptor, the Ranger.
It is. It is almost the size of an F-150, but the same can be said for most of our mid-sized trucks nowadays. Like they've all grown so much
So then
that they're
why not?
almost.
So then why not just sell the F-150 overseas?
It's still slightly too big. Like it's again, it's almost the size like wheelbase width wise. I mean, okay, width wise probably not as wide as F-150, but wheelbase lengthwise, it's getting there. Like especially in crew cab form with the bed. And then because it probably comes with a 6.5 foot bed, so you can't escape 6.5 feet behind, like as the bed, or maybe comes with a 5.5 foot bed. So if anything, it
So
might be like 1 foot shorter.
so
I should look up the wheelbase.
instead of just downsizing the F-150 and making it available to the world, I don't know what's up with your camera, it's blurry. It you brought back the Ranger for that market and then make a Super Duty for the world. It seems like and but and that's what confuses me
That's your markets.
Because
special
all
markets.
right, you do the Ranger, right? Cool.
Hmm.
Why just why not just make a smaller F-150 and not like you don't have to call it the Ranger. You killed the Ranger for a reason. The rank Jeep killed the Comanche and they brought back the Wrangler truck. It's like I
The
there's
Gladiator.
the Gladiator. Yeah, they called it something else. Why? I don't know. The
But
range, the
but
range.
so
If you look at the Ranger when it came out versus the F-150 at that time, two distinctly different sizes. You could tell night and day. That thing was literally a Tacoma, like a Toyota pickup almost, a T100. You know, one of those old school trucks. It was literally that size, and it worked pretty well.
well
You brought back the Ranger, the size of an F-150, and you're gonna create a Super Duty version and then sell that to the world.
the only reason why I say the reason why I'm only gonna interject here. I say that because they're all the same size now. They're like all the mid-sized trucks are now the same size or nearly the same size as their full-size truck brethren now. Like, for example, a Tacoma has grown in size exponentially
Oh, for
today.
sure.
Like,
Now
if
the
you look
Tundra's
at it,
massive. The Tundra's massive now.
but the Tundra's massive. But if you look at the Tacoma, it's almost equally as massive. Like one day I was on a
No,
hike,
no, no, no. It's just like if you
they're
look at a
pretty.
first gen Tundra and you look at this latest Tacoma, exact same size.
Yeah.
And then the
So
Tundra's just
okay,
even more massive.
yeah, it's more. But so what I'm. But if you look at it, they're getting closer and close. Like before, the size difference was definitely distinguishable. Today, everything is they're getting closer and closer in size. Like these mid-sized trucks are all encroaching now full-size truck territory in terms of length, like wheelbase length,
Hmm.
length, like and just overall for the body. Maybe not width. Like they're still a little bit more narrower because again, that's the whole purpose of a mid-size. You're not supposed to be as wide,
Yeah.
but they're approaching the same lengths and width. So like
And
a
that's if you get
GMC,
like the full four doors, right? Because that's not even including the
yes,
half
exactly, and
door
that's
and
what
the
I'm
regular cab
mainly
and stuff.
talking about. Okay, if you get a half cab, exactly what you're saying, you're still getting. I like to call it mid-sized truck because it's not going to be as like gargantuan. But when they
Yeah.
give you those crew cabs now, yeah, they're literally making the crew cabs like just like how the full-size truck crew cabs are. They're making them extra big, extra spacious. You're only getting a 5.5, maybe a 6 foot bed, and you basically got to make do with what you got. So it's still a mid-size. They still compact it in certain areas, but it's getting to the point where it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? What is the point of buying a full size truck? And you've seen that happen a lot in America because people don't want V8 gas mileage or truck fuel economy, but they do need it to do like
Which is fine.
Sunday truck things. Yeah,
That's
like they
that
maybe
I
just go to
get
Home
that.
Depot.
I get the point of making a smaller truck. I get that. I get that all day. Like the
But
Tundra Tacoma is the best example. Um, what is it called? Yeah, I think that's the only one I could think of right off the. Oh, and SUV comparisons, the CRV to HRV. You know, perfect examples of downsized SUVs. The Tundra Tacoma, perfect example of downsizing trucks. Less chop off a couple of cylinders. If chop off some of the weight, chop off some of the mass, chop off some of the dimensions. That's what you're getting, and it makes sense.
but
Ford had that, then they killed it and they brought it back. Chevy, I don't think has that.
well, you know why they
Ram,
killed
forget
it?
about it. Why is that?
It's the American truck market. So the American truck market as someone who's big on V8, the American truck market will never, you can never compare the American truck market to the world truck market. It's its own beast. It's its own beast in a sense that's why Toyota and Nissan wanted their own like little footprint in it. That's why Nissan still sells the Frontier and they're going all in on the Frontier because right now in the American market, they know that they don't really care for a full size Japanese truck, even though they might outperform the American trucks or last longer. What they care about is function and usability for that instance when they need it. They don't care if that truck is going to be better, a better performer, last longer. They just care that, hey, look, does this truck look good? Is it going to look good when I pull up to the job site? Is it going to have the power when I need it? Or what I mean? Little thing. They all have their own little checklist that they're going at. So the American truck market's so skewed that like sometimes it's who has the most power. That's who's going to sell, or it's who has the most off road capability.
At the
that year.
time, right?
That's
You're
what's on
talking
sale
about
at
at
the
the
time.
time.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly at the time. So, um, with the Ranger Super Duty, the only reason why, like I said, I understand it is because the markets where F-150 isn't sold, that's where I think that's what Ford's doing. It's going to be any market. F-150 is not available. Ranger Super Duty. If the F-150 is available, no Ranger Super Duty. Basically, they're basically gonna tell you like exactly what you're saying, which is the American mentality. Go get an F-150. But in the markets that are small, maybe like DR, maybe Haiti, maybe Mexico, but I know
Well,
Mexico gets
Colombia,
F-150s,
Australia, all of Central
exactly
America, South
the
America.
areas that
Yeah.
yeah that got like the little tight roads, they will benefit greatly from a Ranger Super Duty because they're gonna be able to get places that a wide, big American F-150 wouldn't get.
So, was there such thing as a Ranger Super Duty when the Ranger came out?
No, there was never such thing as far as I know. It's
So
just that
why didn't you
people would
just
just
why didn't you just build that from the get go and just call it the Ranger instead of creating a whole different beast, like trying
so
to reinvent the wheel almost?
well, and that's what Americans do best, try to reinvent the wheel.
But like
Until
you just said earlier, you were in Colombia. You know, you were all you saw was like let's say Rangers or Tacomas. You know, regardless of the trim, the Ranger has no trim except like XLT or some shit like that. But that's what it is. So if you're
so
coming
Super
out
Duty's now a trim.
I get what the Super Duty nameplate means. All I'm saying is, if you were trying to sell this to the masses, you could have just been like, "This is the 2026, like, or was it 2024 at the time when it first came out? This is the reimagined Ranger. It's the rival, the F-150, but for the masses. And it's
Nah,
smaller, compact, and it's only for outside, only for the outside market.
you're you're thinking what with the knowledge that we have today. When Ford re-announced the Ranger, it was really just to go against the GMC Canyon, Chevy Colorado, the Toyota Tacoma, because let's be real, the reason why the Toyota Tacoma sold so well in America specifically, this is no disrespect to Toyota, was not only because they were reliable, but they had no competition. There was no Ranger. Ford killed the Ranger. The Chevy S10 in GMC whatever
Died.
twins
Yep.
kind of died off, and then they brought him back later as a Canyon Colorado, but only with a 5 cylinder for the first few years.
Yeah.
Until then, and then until they did the last hurrah before they got to get bailed out, they gave it a 5.3 V8. That was basically like the icing on the cake package. So people who have those ones feel like they're the top dog. Okay, they got the full size truck V8 in their little mid size truck. So Americans love doing shit like that. Ford kind of sat behind the scenes with the Ranger, only brought the Ranger back out because markets overseas have been crying for it, and they've had it overseas. We just never had it in America. Like they actually brought it out overseas, I think a couple years prior, and it was doing well in Europe and all those other
Well,
little
they're crying for more
countries.
options, no? Because like the only
Yeah,
thing that's satisfying, the only thing that's in that market is the older Rangers and like the Hilux, like you said, or the Xterra, or I forget from Nissan and all the other
they
brands.
I know what you're talking. The Nissan Navara
Navara,
overseas they
yes,
call it.
yes. So like all
So
those,
overseas, they have the Navara, the D-Max. They do have a big market. Think about it. They have the Mitsubishi Triton,
yes,
Isuzu D-Max,
yep.
Nissan Navara, Toyota Hilux, um, Ford Ranger,
Mhm.
and and again Dodge and Chevy right now. I don't think Chevy does have the Canyon and Colorado exported overseas to other markets. It's just that they look actually different. They're not even looking the same. Like they actually are like let's just say this: it's a mixture of badge engineering and part sharing from their previous platform. So they're not even as how do I call it desirable over there because they're half old, half new. Like they have the reliable engine, but they're half old, meaning like they have the old interior and old like pieces on it, old lights in certain areas. Anyways, that's where the Ranger Super Duty comes in to change that
Well, it's towing three
because
thousand pounds more for sure. God damn. I just looking at the
yeah,
numbers.
so those numbers alone, like I was reading. That's
But
why at first I'm like,
they should have hit
this
that
is
from the
stupid.
get go. That's why I'm like surprised.
They couldn't because you got to think about it. That's research and development and cost. That's going to cost them more to make a truck that's going to be better than the F-150 and back in their home market when they weren't trying to make a truck better. It's supposed to just be a hey, you need another truck, here's a truck. But you
Just
can get it, you
rebadge
can
the F
use
one
it.
fifty.
It's too big.
Yeah.
It's too big. They would have to make it like an F-50, F-100. Like like if you like for example, how I would see them benefiting from this in the American market is they would badge it as a F-100. That's the
Okay.
only way. And then they would give it different sheet metal. Because then that's the only way someone in America would buy it. Because the Americans, I hate to say it, won't buy it if they see Ranger Super Duty. But if you see F-100 and it's basically a Ranger, that's that's just, it's an F-150 that looks like it shrunk it down, basically built off this Ranger Super Duty platform. The Americans will buy it because of their mentality. They'll buy it, they'll gobble it up. But
You just mentioned this too. I'm gonna read this little paragraph. Still, model overlap aside, we could see a legitimate use case for a truck smaller than an F-150, but with the same extra capability here in the U.S. But the American truck market isn't big on nuance or clever niches. Just ask Nissan about its Titan XD in-betweener, a full-size truck based on a half-ton Titan, but uprated slightly to land somewhere
yes,
capability-wise between the regular Titan and a full-on heavy-duty truck. Most truck buyers skipped right past that white space offering, even if it made sense for most weekend warriors who towed or hauled a lot and hoped into full on heavy duty 3/4 ton rigs. After all, why get only what you need when you can get what you want?
you know what I wanted? I wanted a Cummins V8 Nissan Titan for the longest time. Because why? That was the first time Cummins made a V8 diesel. And literally, Nissan canceled it. They scrapped it. Like the Titan, the whole Titan program was all messed up because the Titan was supposed to have a different looking windshield, different front end, but they changed
No,
the
it
front
still
end.
it still came with the 5 liter Cummins.
But they changed the front end just to fit the 5 liter Cummins.
That's fine.
Otherwise,
They made it fit.
otherwise, yeah, but otherwise, the Titan when they developed it would have had a smaller front end, like the whole front engine bay would have been smaller, more like the Nissan Patrol platform. It would have been a lot smaller, but
You can
because
fit in a
they
full
were,
cast iron diesel engine.
yeah, but that's what I mean. That's why they changed it. So the whole front end of the Titan got changed last minute just to fit the Cummins V8, which was a flop, meaning it was a flop sales wise. But people who have it either like it, some people love it, some people hate it. But the people who love it. But otherwise, yeah, the front windshield would have been different. The whole front end would have been like, how do I call it, a little bit more Japanese. You know what I mean?
True.
Versus how they made it more American and had to borrow some engineering from Dodge because they had to see how Dodge made a diesel fit. Even though Dodge is 360, I had to look and say, okay, well, how do we fit this big engine?
Yeah,
Because
but
their V8 mounts pretty low. Like the Nissan, the VK V8 mounts and sits pretty low and gets tucked in between the frame rails.
yeah, but
But the
you can't
Cummins kind of sat.
if you can't do that with the size of a Cummins. That's the issue.
Like, yeah, you can't.
Even though the
So
VK is technically larger in displacement, the size of that Cummins is ridiculous.
insane. And that was the beauty of the how do I call it, of the Nissan Titan though. It had two configurations. Again, they had the XD came with heavier duty upgraded leaf springs, upgraded suspension, and you had the option of getting the diesel. So
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have just one diesel. You had one V8. You had two V8s. You had a diesel 5.0 V8 or you had a 5.6. You had two 5 liter V8 options. And obviously, if you tune the Cummins, you're making a lot of power because you're making the torque, V8 diesel torque.
True.
And it comes with an Ison 6 speed automatic.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
it was that's the thing. It's a very capable truck. It's just the Americans, which is why I'm always going to beat up the Americans. I like trucks that they literally will ignore the best option for them and say, "I don't want that. I don't want that truck. I want F-150, or I want a Silverado or a GMC Sierra Denali." I'm like, well, your truck's gonna break in like a year or two, right? I don't care. My truck look good. All I care about.
No,
All I care about.
sometimes they'll defend that and be like, it will last longer. I just be
That's what
like,
they'll say.
hold my beer.
Yeah, they say it's gonna last longer, but I'm like, when will they learn? You're not going to beat the Japanese at reliability. You could beat each other. You could beat you could Ford. You could beat Chevy up and Chevy. You could beat Dodge up and vice versa. Y'all can beat each other up at reliability, but you're not going to beat the Japanese.
Yeah,
You can't.
we'll see. I'm not a big fan of it, but I ain't gonna knock it. I just feel as if they could have borrowed the same frame from the F-150 and just slapped a smaller body on it, in my opinion. But
Too
eh,
big.
what do you mean?
Too big.
What do you mean?
Too big. Like the Ranger's almost again. The F-150 is still too wide. It's still too wide.
But if you look at
And
the actual frame of it, you can make a smaller body. It's a body on frame vehicle. If you make a smaller
but
body, you'll be chilling.
but the Rangers that means the Rangers frame is even more narrower. So like the Rangers body fits perfectly on it. Where I know what you're saying. Yeah, they could have used the F
No,
one
I don't
fifty
think that
frame, the
Ranger
strong.
frame is as narrow as you make it seem to be. I think they literally borrowed a lot of that stuff from the F-150 and just they literally put a smaller body on it. Like judging, if I look up aftermarket parts, like aftermarket side sets of the Ranger, if I see those brackets so skinny, that I know they borrowed the frame from the F-150.
Okay, the Ranger is 127, where the F-150 is 140. Sorry, 40, 148 inches long. So it's 20. The Ranger, the F-150 is 21 inches longer.
So they took away a foot from each end, which is fine, because you can shave off a
Manipulate
foot
the
from
body.
you can shave off a foot from each side of the frame, especially if you're only planning to fit a V6 in there. You
Now
can
let's
do
see what
that.
the width is. Let's
Because
see what the width is
if you
too.
look at the nose of a Ford F-150, although it's like it looks stout and short, it's actually quite long. Like the way they made the bumper wrap around and stuff, it's like super. It goes in your face almost. The Range is more of a flat face type car. You could tell like they were able to actually pull some of that back because they're not fitting the V8.
So
I guarantee I
150
guarantee you
has
they
a
took the
width.
frame of an F-150 and just designed a body around it. They're not gonna go through that much R&D to build a whole new frame for it.
No, it's different. So the Ranger has a width of 73.3 inches and F-150 a width of 85.8.
So another foot.
And then so
Blake. I'm telling you, look up the body for each one. If they really did a different frame, you got that. But I
they're
have a,
different.
I have a feeling, yes, body wash, like the whole body. What I'm saying is the frame could more likely be the same. It's not a unibody vehicle. It's a body on frame vehicle, meaning I could swap whatever body I want on it as long as I meet the mounting points. The engine
Yeah,
still
but
the engine still ding to the frame. The suspension still chatted to the frame.
yeah,
The
but they're different. They're different. So like basically the largest section, so basically the Ranger frame is heavier. And this is just me quickly going on a Ranger forum. So, because someone went underneath their friend's Colorado, and they said the Ranger frame looks beefier and heavier than any other midsize. So, what Ford did is exactly what you're thinking they did. Yes, they used some bits and pieces of the F-150, but the front suspension design and everything else is different. So, like the front, they said the largest section of the Ranger frame rail shares identical dimensions to the F-150 light duty frame. So, but the F-150 is built on three frames. That's what people don't know. So the difference is the gauge of steel. So light duty F-150 uses lower quality steel, lower yield strength than the two heavier frames. Then you have the higher model F-150s and probably one for the Raptor, which uses a stronger, thicker frame. Can remember the first Raptor had that issue where someone took it on a jump and the frame snapped.
Yeah.
I know Ford doesn't want that to happen again. So that makes sense to me. Why I see people complain about the Ranger's fuel economy because they were like, "Yo, this thing is so heavy, and rides pretty heavy." It makes sense because they're using half-ton steel versus like everybody else who's probably making mid-sized trucks where they're using smaller frames, lighter steel. So they said the Ranger frame is more identical to the previous F-150 2015 to 2022. I mean, sorry, 2020
Yeah, because I'm looking
frame.
right now. I'm looking at the chassis specs, and the side rail sections are the exact same. The
So,
Ranger has two less crossmember points, and
so
if you
yeah,
look at the
yep.
regular cabs instead of the super, was it the super cabs? They're the exact same. So the only difference is, like you said, yield strength, which it depends on model. But if you get like a Raptor Super Crew or like let's say an F-150 Super Crew, they have the
No,
exact same yield strength.
all they did is literally, yeah, all they did was literally take the
The
front
F
and
one
rear
fifty,
sections.
yeah, the F 150
Yeah,
frame. They just
they
that's what I'm
took the front
saying.
and rear sections and changed it, but the center of the truck, which is, I know what you're saying because I know how, yeah, that center part is always the same. It's like a ladder, that ladder frame part
Yeah,
where it just goes straight down. So yeah, they said the only thing the difference is the Ranger has fewer cross members, 6 versus 8,
yeah.
but the
That's what
Ranger
I just
does
looked at.
feature, yeah, but it does feature through welded cross members like the F-150. So they actually welded all the way through. They're not bolted on.
So
It's pretty cool.
it's basically the same. Like
It's basically a
I
light
knew they were gonna
light
put that
duty.
much R&D to the frame. I knew it. Like, come on, it's the exact
Yeah.
same bullshit. Not
So
saying
the
it's
sixth
not
gen
different.
Ranger.
It's definitely different
Okay.
because of welding and all this stuff.
Okay. So the sixth gen Ranger is different than a fifth gen Ranger in North America. So the American fifth gen Ranger is on the T6.2 version of the chassis, dimensioned to the same wheelbase as a fifth gen. So essentially, it's a 50 millimeter shorter wheelbase than I guess, the other markets that go overseas. So this is even more confusing. So
So, all right. So what you're
Ford is
telling,
playing with a lot of stuff.
yeah. So what
Ford
you're
is
telling
playing
me
with a
is
lot.
they use the same frame and just altered the front and rear just ever so slightly for different. That's it. It's not that much.
Yep.
Like if they designed a whole new frame and everything was different, all right, I get it. You got that, but they didn't do that, and I knew
So
they
yeah.
weren't gonna do
So
that.
the T6.2
Hmm.
is what they use for the Ford Everest, which is the SUV they sell
Yeah.
overseas that goes against the Toyota Ford Turner.
Yeah.
And the I can't even say Nissan Patrol would be what's the smaller Nissan Xterra they had back
Xterra.
in the day, or Pathfinder. And then then some people are saying that they think the frame is weaker in North America, but the Australia frame. So at least,
No, if
well,
no,
to wrap
I
that
just
up,
saw it. If you got like the super XLT or whatever it may be, you got the same yield strength. But if you got the base model, you get the weaker yield strength.
yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, the upper models get the stronger frame, but it's the same frame. I mean, same frame. So like technically, like yeah, if someone wanted the frame swap, which is crazy to say. Imagine this. Imagine you bought a Ranger and years later you're like, damn, I got the weak frame. I need a frame swap.
I'll just weld metal on my car, but yeah, you could frame swap it.
But yeah, no, it's kind of funny to see how what they did there. Like it makes sense to me, in all honesty. That's why I was like at first, I'm like, it's different, but it's not really different. Like, yeah, it's different. Technically, if we're gonna say technically, it's just a
Technically,
different frame.
technically yes. Technically, by a
But
scientific
then,
engineering standpoint, yes, it is
but
different.
it's
But
really mostly they
when
really
you
just
look at
action
it,
engineered it.
and measure everything, got exact same. Besides like two,
It's
three
really
sections.
badge engineered.
Yeah,
Yep, and then maybe the front
because
suspension and rear
at
suspension.
the end of the day, your job as an engineer is to spend less in everything, time, money, everything, and make more. And If you could cut
That
away
kind of
from
disappoints
that
me.
and use the F-150 frame, change it a little bit, and still profit, you just did your job
That
as
kind
an
of
engineer.
disappoints me.
Why is
That
that?
kind of disappoints me a lot because I was
I
expecting something
expected that
completely
from the
different.
beginning.
I was expecting something more different, but then it doesn't really now surprise me at all because you know why. Now
Why?
it makes sense why when I was first when the Ranger first came out and I was reading the forums, I see people say, "Yo, this drives just like my F-150. Like, yo, the Ranger is actually nice." Like people literally when the Ranger came out, people I guess thought was gonna ride like a cheap light truck, and it rode like a F-150, like solid. I'm talking about. And they were like, "This thing feels solid. Like it feels like a beast." And here we are.
I'm telling you, man. Engineers did their
But
job.
I'm happy. I'm happy they brought the Ranger Super Duty. You know why? Because then that tells us that if you really wanted to, you can take a F-150, like a Raptor or a higher model,
Yeah.
slap the hubs, change the hubs, heavier duty leaf springs, and voila, you have a heavy duty F-150. I mean, Dodge offered something like that. They had a heavy duty package for the 1500s, and then of course they even confused everybody further because they had the mega cab.
You know what Dodge should do? Bring back the Little Red Express.
They keep saying that they should, but I feel like they're gonna do that as a package for the new Ram
Nah,
this
they
year.
should like do their whole Ram 15 like Ford was like what Ford is doing. They should do a Ram 1500 whatever and then just do a Little Red Express.
That's what I said. That's what they're gonna do this year. I have a feeling. The reason why I have a feeling they're gonna do it, they just brought back the Hemi.
Call it the Dodge Ram LRE, Little Red Express.
You can call it the Dodge Ram Little Red. That's all they're gonna call it. Think about it, Little Red, and then they're gonna come out and but you guys want the Hemi? All right, here's a rare version with a 6.4 that's making 500 horsepower because we put a different cam in it.
No, they should do
No,
exactly what
I know
Range
they're
is
not.
doing, stuffing their four cylinders and V6s in there. Well, on their case, it won't be a V6; it'll be the Hurricane engine. But
Which is we already know it's fairly stout, makes great
nope,
power,
I don't
and
agree.
it's making the Rams that much faster.
I
You
no
mean to tell
agree.
me people could buy a
I
factory
no
Ram
agree.
and do 0 to 60 in what 5.2, 5 seconds,
I no agree.
maybe 4.8 seconds,
I no agree.
just off a Hurricane?
I
Okay,
nope.
you mean to
I
tell me they do a 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds? They do SRT numbers in a full size truck.
and guess what? That engine capped out.
The engine got a lot more steam to go.
That engine capped
especially
out.
especially from what I've seen the
They
tuner.
should
That engine
do
gonna
nah.
push 800 to 1,000.
They should have done what everyone else was doing. They built the engine, the car, and the platform. Say it's rated for this X, Y, and Z
Yeah, rated
type
for a
of BS.
thousand.
No, 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 no. You rate it for like 500. Let them tinker with it. Oh my God, this thing could do six. Oh my God, this thing could do seven. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what they did.
No, they didn't. They offered packages. They went, oh, we
No,
building a new twin turbo inline six, 600, 800, 1,000 horse. You got it all. Like, no one's going to buy that. Like, all right, we get it. You
yeah, they
know,
are. Yeah, they are.
people
They
are
have to
buying more M3s and M4s than they are Hurricane platform cars.
right now. Right now.
People
Just
are
right now.
think about it though. People are willing to spend $80,000 for a car, a 500 horsepower car right off the gate. They're willing to do that
Sheep,
more than they are to
sheep,
buy that.
sheep.
It's
That's what
not
they are.
cheap. That's eighty
No, they're being
thousand
no, no,
dollars.
they're being sheep. Like they're being like the animal. They're being sheep.
It's
You
an
know why?
M3,
Yeah.
M4.
No. See, it's the new Honda. It's like the new Hondas of the street. It's like the new
And
Q50
and
or
I'm a,
FX of the
you know what,
street.
Blake? Before we get to the next topic, I'm gonna wrap this up right now. They gotta build a sports car. End of story.
They
End
will, and
of
they will.
story.
But Dodge is not known right away. They're known for muscle,
And
muscle,
I get it.
heavy,
I said this from the
strong.
beginning. I get it. V8 America muscle. That's what America does best.
So, so
you're tipping into European territory. You gotta do what the Europeans do to make it sell.
but I'm gonna say one last. It's because they're owned by a European company. And now that the CEO's gone, they get to finally lean back into their American heritage and do their American way of making V8s. But at first, they were told 6 cylinders, and I'm here for it only because it's modern Dodge power, a new modern engine from Mopar. Okay, a company can only thrive so long selling the same engine. They always have to make something new. So like, it's finally nice to see something new. But you were right; they should not have just asked like,
Oh, for
"Hey, Hemi,
sure.
goodbye."
Oh, for
It
sure.
should have been
Sales went.
Hemi,
Pew,
Hurricane,
pew.
Hemi, Hurricane, and then they would have let them numbers speak for itself. At least if people had the option to go test drive a 6.4 and maybe a Hurricane high output, they might have said, "You know what? Maybe I'll just get the Hurricane." But if you only give people the Hurricane, and yes, it might be better,
I don't think
people are
so.
gonna fight. You know what? You know what? Just from seeing the numbers of people what they run,
I'm telling you right now, Dodge marketed this engine wrong. Just like, and I'll give them crap like I've given Toyota crap when they marketed the LFA, like I've given Mitsubishi crap for building an Eclipse crossover. I give anyone crap where I think like it's just wrong. Dodge marketed this wrong. They had no other
okay,
choice, so I understood they had to build it. But marketing wise, to stuff it in something as, let's say, iconic
heavy.
as a Charger or child, not even heavy, just as iconic, just the symbol itself, Charger, Challenger. First thing you're gonna think of is, oh, I got that V8 Hellcat, Supercat, Red Eye, all this, all these names about how glorious the V8 in your muscle car is. That's just the
Six
way it
pack.
goes. No, they're not gonna say, "Oh, I got." The only way. You know what? The only way they're gonna say a six pack, they got a six pack of beer. That's it. That's all they're
It's
gonna.
the 60s, 70s now. It's coming back. We're back.
They
We're
didn't build
back.
an inline
Mississippi.
engine for the Dodge Charger and Challenger in 1970, 1971.
Yeah, they did. They around that time.
No, they didn't. They didn't build
Yeah,
an
I swear
inline
they did it.
six.
It's a slant six.
The older one, yeah,
Charger.
like older slant six. Yes,
Nah, 19, yeah, hold on. 1970s, 1968, 1970s. It's often for one forgotten fact.
I'm
The
looking this up right
68
now with you.
slant
Then
six. The slant six. And that's why I'm like, they used to call it a six pack. Dodge is just replaying history again. It's like history coming back again. And it's like history keeps repeating itself.
pure shite.
Rare, rare,
But guess what?
rare. And the thing is, these things, believe it or not, actually the funniest, the low key funny part about these is these, if built and supercharged, can make an easy 500-600 horsepower.
But guess what?
That's the funny part.
Guess what? Guess what? The reason why the
Six pack.
Charger sold is because of the V8.
We know, we
The
know.
reason
And
why
I'm
the
not saying,
Challenger sold is because of the V8.
but all I'm
The
saying is
reason why
it's not the
anything
60s
in
anymore.
Dodge's platform sold is because of the
But
V8.
it's not the 60s, 70s anymore. Like I think people need to look at this. Dodge was on a power hungry warpath, meaning like people fail to realize like okay, yeah, Dodge had always built these wild random engines. Like okay, in the 80s they had the K cars with the turbo motors. I wanted one. I wanted a Chrysler Conquest, a Dodge
You
Stealth,
mean the
all the
Mitsubishi
yeah, the
inspired?
2.2. Yes,
Yeah.
the 2.2 turbo fours. And I wanted one because that was different Dodge power. And Dodge always had this thing of whenever they came out, they wanted to have the most power. Now, back in the day, they didn't maintain it as long as they did with the Hellcat run. You know what I mean? But they always came out with little engines and said, "We have the most power on the block. We're Mopar." And then, obviously Ford and Chevy would go back to the drawing board, do what they got to do, and make something more powerful. So for years they had it. They were doing their thing. Chevy Ford was killing it with the mod motors. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Smooth power, dual overhead cam. Then Chevy said, "Hey, f that. We got an LS." Made an LS motor,
But
and then started
they
putting
also had the Cobalt. the four cylinder.
Yeah,
That one, the
exactly, which was
supercharged.
the
Yeah,
Ecotech.
yeah, the
Yeah, the Ecotech,
supercharged.
the LSJ. And then it was funny because it's funny how they call it LSJ too. But then um but then yeah, it's funny. Then you had Chevy, then they stopped putting those engines in their trucks and they became good. So Dodge had to respond. So Dodge came out with the Hemi. The Hemi was the perfect time because they didn't Dodge didn't have a modern V8 and the 4.7 wasn't enough. They couldn't even squeeze that much power out of it.
Nope.
And so but it was in my mind it's still a fine engine like if you're comparing it with like the 90s V8s like because everything in the 90s like Lexus, BMW, everything only had like 280 to like 320 horsepower, so it was a fine engine
Yeah.
when you got the high output version, but and because it revved very well. So anyway, long story short, Dodge came out, had the most power with the Hemi. Then everybody caught up. The 5.7 was no longer that special. Then they made the 6.1. 6.1 was great. Then Chevy said, let's make a 6.2. And Ford made, their supercharged 5.4s and whatever.
Well, Chevy
Then
also
Dodge made
had
a
the
6.4.
7 liter with the
Then,
C6,
yeah, exactly.
Z06.
Then Dodge made a 6.4 because they already had the Viper still at the time.
Hmm.
So they let the Viper run its course. So they always wanted to have the most power. So this is just a new era for Dodge that now they finally said, okay, we did the V8, we did the four cylinder. Y'all loved our SRT4. Y'all ate it up so much that
Not as
that
much,
that
but I get you.
people, you know how people were. They're
I
like, yo,
own
my
one,
God, it
so
crackled,
I own one. Don't get
it
me
crackles and
wrong,
pops. Like
but
everybody loved that. It
I
crackled and popped.
I own one. Don't get me wrong. I love the way they crackle and pop, but people would rather still get a Civic.
Cheaper because Civic's cheaper.
Of course,
I,
and you
and
turbo those,
Civic
and
was
they don't.
cheaper.
You could turbo a dual like a single overhead cam Honda like D motor, and put
And it won't
nitrous and a
blow up.
turbo on it, and that thing won't blow up. You could starve that thing or oil that thing will for some reason run, and I'm just like, wow, this is an engineering feat. People were running those back in the day. They were like stomping
Yeah,
on motherfuckers. Like they're not gonna
yeah,
go buy a
and low
neon
key,
for
they'll
that.
be in low key, and they'll be in low key. They'll be like, yeah, I'm just gonna turbo my D series, and you'd have all. I hate to say it, especially as young kids, but I'm just gonna get a B series and just turbo that. It's like, guys, like
But
you guys had,
ima-
everybody had the sauce right there in front
but
of them. They
imagine
could have
though.
been running the streets with turbo kits on their D series, enjoying life.
Imagine though, people buy these cars, Hondas. They're not buying the neons for $500. They're buying these Hondas for $500. They're buying an eBay turbo kit for 8 at the time. Now it's probably 2 grand
Exactly,
now. Then they grab
and they're
like a
just
nitrous kit
sending it,
for two, three
and they're
hundred
just
on
sending it.
eBay or Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. Now they
They're
buy a
just,
clutch for like $200, $300. Now all of a sudden for
yep,
less than 2 grand, you're gapping fools. Two
it's
grand.
amazing.
That's the price of like let's say what that's $700 less than what I paid for my neon stock, bone stock.
Yeah,
You see what
it's
I'm
true.
saying?
It's true.
And it's a
It's
whole lot
true.
lighter.
But but see those the difference was though was the SRT4 always will have that spot of being legendary because it revolutionized this like the tuning market. 'Cause it was almost like America, the Americans did this.
Really?
I know what you're gonna say it's not really American, but at the time
No, it's not the fact that it's not really American. You're saying it revolutionized the tuning market? Have
for
you?
Dodge,
Yeah, but
for
it
Dodge and
didn't
American for the American
revolutionize the
brand.
tuning
That's
market.
like
Have you ever heard of?
for the American brands,
Have you
the
ever
Eco
heard
like.
of a car called the Evo 8?
Nah, see, you're gonna talk to me about the Japanese cars. That's what I'm
No,
saying.
no, I'm
I'm
talking
sticking.
about tuning, aftermarket, the
Yeah, no,
aftermarket
yeah,
support.
no. I'm saying American tuner cars because we know the Japanese had the tuner cars on lock. I'm talking about American Focus RS. I mean, so far Focus SVT, whatever they had back in
Oh,
the
the
day.
Focus RS, that the same
Cobalt,
car that
Cobalt
borrowed the
SS.
5 cylinder from the Audi.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Cobalt. Exact. Well, no, Volvo,
Volvo.
Volvo
Sorry.
T5.
Volvo, yep,
Volvo.
T5.
Because that was what that's why you were like, why do you want a Volvo engine so bad? I was like, I wanted one before. Then when Ford used it, I was like, confirmed. Then I'm like, aftermarket just took off now. Perfect. I'm like, it's time. Now it's my time. But no. Also, you had Chevy. They didn't really have much, but you had the 3800 supercharged V6s.
Yes,
So
yes, you
that's what they
did.
basically had running around. I
But they
mean, they
also
had
had
that
that eco.
SS
They also had
version.
that EcoTech though, or that
I was gonna say they had
supercharged
that
four cylinder.
supercharged. that came on the Cobalt later on, like '06, '07, and that was the LSJ. Then later on, it became LS. I forget the name, but it became turbocharged instead of
Because also
supercharged.
not only the 5 cylinder that came in the Ford, it was the 4 cylinder from Mazda too,
Yes, the
from the
2.3.
Speed series. Yeah,
Yes, that was gonna say that, and that's what another reason why I was like, oh, I could buy a Focus. Oh, sorry, I heard something. I could buy a Focus or a what's the other car? Any one of them, and I can just swap that. Oh, the Mercury Milan. I could buy one of those 5 speed. Imagine, imagine, just imagine pulling up to the me, whoosh, whoosh, on some wheels in this
it's a
bag and just
Mercury
air it out.
Milan.
And
That's
people will be
wild.
like, "Whose grandma's here?" I'll put a handicap sign on it on purpose and just get out the car with a cane and be like, "Who's trying to get gapped?"
This young bull with a cane, yo, that's crazy.
But but no, in all honesty, so like the American tuner car market was so small. Like we only have the SRT4, the Focus, and then the Cobalt.
Hmm.
And then maybe in between, you had the Sunfire, some people with the
The
Buick Regals, the
SRT
Grand
4 was the
Prix.
better of the three. I would agree, in my opinion though. I don't know which was
It's the
better
only thing that
overall.
opened up Americans into that, like, let's mod our cars, like, and actually get back into that. Before they were just buying cars. Like they were some you had people modifying their cars, but most people just buy like,
But I will
Cobra,
still disagree with you
Camaro.
before we move on. I'll disagree with you that that did not turn up the tuning market. The American tuning market,
Four cylinder.
unfortunately, yeah, but the American tuner market never really happened. It was always the V8
Japanese.
market. It was always the V8 market that
It
was.
really always was the V market
So
that
when you
always
say
owned.
tuning market of America, I think V8. When you say tuning market of Japanese, I think turbocharged 4 cylinders, 2J for exception, RBZ exception, and that's pretty much it.
VQs. You can't
VQs,
even
they
go into
they
VQs.
weren't turbo though. I mean, wasn't that the
Naturally aspirated.
what came in the 300ZX?
Oh, that was the old school VG.
Yeah, the
Oh,
VG is the
yeah,
exception. Like all those,
yeah.
like they had that on lock. Like that. If you're talking about tuner, that's what that is. America never really had a tuner market, and if it did, it was always with the V8, and it was always supercharging, sometimes
Very,
turbo.
very small. Like
But
only
then,
because I follow so many like American old forums. I always knew about the little shows, and the era I'm about to
yeah,
talk about,
oh, of
the
course.
'04 era where they had body kits and stuff.
Oh yeah, of course. They'll
That
go grab like
because
second gen Eclipses and shit like that.
but everything, if you've seen somebody, let's just say the American cars, you would have never thought you would have seen like, you know, maybe a 300 Chrysler, a 300M with a body kit. You never
Yeah,
thought you would have
of
seen
course.
an Intrepid or like a Buick Regal or a LeSabre. Or I'm
You
trying
know
to think
what?
of some
I would
Ford
even
Taurus.
I would even argue
You would
with
never
you.
think you would see
I
that.
would even argue with this. The Volkswagen Jetta had a better tuner market in America at that time than the Dodge Neon. All day.
Yes,
All
yes.
day. The Audi
You know
B
why? You know why I gotta say
the
that?
B5 S4.
The Audis, everybody knew they came turbo to it. People started like realizing like, I can get a turbo car.
Yeah,
Especially back then, people it was cool.
The America didn't have the turbo market tuner market because the Germans and Japanese were just so present here.
Exactly. Then people just that's why I said people just bought cars. They didn't actually
The
modify
B5
them.
S4, the E46 M3, Mercedes M1
Exactly.
Mercedes
The
M130
E39 M5.
the Mercedes M113K that came in all those platforms. Um,
Exactly. The GS 400, GS
GS400
430.
is another one. GS430, all the 2Js.
Uh,
The Evo, the Subaru WRX, the Audi Turbo 5, the Volkswagen
oh,
VR6,
the
the
G35s when they first came out back then, because
yeah,
I
the
know that them shit
VQs, yeah.
they had everybody in the chokehold back then at that time.
Like America didn't really
Uh,
have a tuner market.
what else? What else? There's so many cars that's why I said that's why I'm like the Neon was kind of like the first one to be like, what is this thing? You know what I mean?
It
Because
pops
like
and
Americans,
cracks. And it does
like,
what it does what it does.
A lot of Americans, especially old timers, despise it. Like my pops hated the Neon. When he had one as a rental, he hated it. Why? Because it was just a small car. He doesn't like small cars,
Yeah.
right? Me, I'm like in my mind, I'm like this thing is like a little go kart. I'm like, this thing's like zippy. So I'm like, okay, this would be fun to drive around. So when they came out with the SRT4, I knew what type of time Dodge was on. I'm like, they literally took the lightest little car, took this engine, and said, okay, this is the biggest engine we can put and the most power we can make. Cool, send it.
No,
Because,
they could have made more power.
well, reliably and to keep a
No, they could
warranty.
have made more power. They could have made more power.
Reliably?
87.5 millimeter bore, over 100 millimeter stroke, 2.4 liters. You telling me they couldn't make more power?
Okay, they could have, but reliably though, like
Yeah,
Dodge though.
yeah, they
Not,
can.
I know you can make more power reliably.
Bro,
I'm
I don't
I'm
have
saying
to
Dodge.
crack open that block. I just slap on like a Mitsubishi like Evo 9 size turbo, and I know I'll be making more power.
That's wow.
They didn't do that, and
Reliably
I
though.
did not understand
But
why.
baby turbo technology back then was it okay?
Bullshit.
So
Bullshit. Bullshit.
yeah, I was gonna say, once
What
you
they
said the
should have.
Evo
The only
turbo, I was like,
thing
yeah,
that I'm gonna give Dodge flack for when it comes to the Neon is the fact that they made a semi-closed deck design. If they went full closed deck like the 4G63, they would now. Then I would agree with you. They had a tuner market,
see,
especially if they made versions of that engine in the rear-wheel drive platform, or if they even just made it all-wheel drive. But
the
they
reason why I
didn't
say
do
that
that.
because Chevy tried to get into the tuner market with the HHR and the SSR.
Yeah, that was
Like,
stupid.
do you remember?
I remember that. That's
You remember those?
yep.
Yeah, they tried. Yeah,
Bad
the
result.
SSR, I always thought was cool, and I always think it's still gonna age well.
You are a
And
rare
to this day,
breed, Blake. You always will be when it comes to these cars.
I would. I know you're like, how did you even remember the SSR? And I'm
Yeah.
like, that thing, it looked cool, it looked different. You know what I mean? But then I seen one, and I was like, I would never buy one. But then I'm like, you know what? If I buy one, that's the one that I put the 7.0 LS, the LS7 in it.
You
I put the
wild.
LS7 in it.
You wild.
I put the LS7 and make that keep that manual. That's it. I'd get a 6 speed manual one, shift my own gears, lighten that thing up, and that's my Corvette truck. And I'm dropping the top.
Nah, you crazy. I wouldn't do such things at all. Nah.
Speaking of which, now it's time to go look for an SSR.
Nah.
I
F that. F that.
wonder how much they go for now.
I could go on and on how Dodge screwed up the four cylinder market.
Chevy. Oh yeah, yeah,
Well,
Dodge is
Chevy
cool.
screwed
You
that
know
up.
what?
Chevy screwed it up like crazy. Ford really didn't have nothing. They just borrowed everyone else's parts. And Dodge was on the end of the whole DSM contract BS. So they were like, "Oh, we could build our own four cylinder," when it literally looks like a 4G63. But
Yeah,
all I had to do is drill out the holes for the head of a 4G, and I could just slap it on my neon block and look. Oh my goodness, 4G63. Stupid. Anywho,
yeah.
Willow Springs is here to stay. Speaking of America,
Yep.
I don't know if you know
What
the brand Singer who what is it, builds
window?
all those high revving Porsches out in California. They're like a resto company that's actually doing pretty well for themselves. But
Mm-hmm.
them along with what is it, a private firm bought Willow Springs, I believe.
Good, good. Because you know what's funny?
And they're planning to do
They're
some
always trying to
restorations
change.
and modifications to it.
They're always trying to change stuff. Like, yeah, if I went up for sale and I bet all these other companies were like, we're gonna buy that up and build something else there. So I'm happy that they bought it and they're gonna repurpose it and keep it as a racetrack.
Yeah, they're gonna change a little bit of it. They're going to modernize the track, but what is it called?
We need more racetracks. Like we need more and more racetracks around the U.S. Because that
They brought Alex Works. He's a Le Mans winner and he used to drive an F1. They brought him in as a consultant with creating runoff areas with additional tarmac and gravel and high speed sweepers in the corners, like let's say 7, 8, and 9 here, especially going from 5 to 6 to 7. So it's gonna get an updated approach, and I kind of like that. It's gonna be
You're gonna
more
have to riddle
safe.
me something soon.
What's that?
You're gonna have to riddle me something soon, man.
What's that?
I need to know how big and how long an average racetrack is, and how much land do you need to have a racetrack?
It depends on what you're going for. I would say you
Okay,
need. I say you would need something the size of a mall slash mall parking lot to build like a
so together
small,
combined.
yeah, like a smallish racetrack or a decent sized
Okay,
one. It won't be like a crazy big one like Coda, Miami, um, what is it, Michelin, Road Atlanta, even the ones in Europe like Spa, Silverstone, Brands Hatch, um, Le Mans especially is a big one. Like those are just some of those are just big tracks. Brands Hatch is a nice small track. Sardena is a nice small, somewhat small track.
okay.
What else? What else? I can't think of any. Monza is all straight, so I wouldn't consider that a small track. Monaco is a street circuit, and it's although it looks big, it's actually somewhat small. So you don't need much. I would say those two sizes, like a mall and a mall parking lot. I would say.
So up to 500 to like 700 acres, 800. I should say 800. Okay, maybe
Average
600
mile
to 800.
racetrack. Oh, no, that's horse race.
Hmm. Would be nice too if there was a racetrack. They had some bays, so you can go there. You have a bay. You bring your tools. You use the bay. You know what I mean? It has a little lift in it.
So
You look quick.
1 to 2 miles for oval tracks. Short tracks are traditionally less than a mile, so that's probably a
It's
circle
pretty good.
track. So let's see. Let's just you know what? Let me do this. Average length of Kota 3.41 miles. Okay, let's do Michelin. 2.54 miles. There you go. So yeah, it's about a mile in this parking lot if you cut that little ledge off. So about 2 miles, let's say.
Okay.
If you make the track 2 miles within a confined space. So
Yeah.
let's do this. Square footage of 600,000 square feet.
Hmm. It's not bad.
So Michelin Race Road Atlanta encompasses 750 acres, 600,000 square feet of paved team paddock space, and approximately 130,000 square feet of paved fan zone.
Okay, perfect.
So,
That's exactly what I needed. That's exactly what I needed.
so what houses that are 600,000 square foot?
No, it's gotta, find a nice open piece of land. I feel like, we need more racetracks, and I feel like imagine a racetrack that was designed to actually challenge the driver. But like, obviously with safety's built in, so it's a challenge to test the limits of your car. You know what I mean? A racetrack you go to actually test your limits, but then
Like,
also with bays, so you can work on your car while you're there. So you're like anything
yeah, so
happens,
it's
you can
like
quickly work
a
on it.
Michelin Road Atlanta or like a IMSA track or like Laguna Seca
Hmm.
along the lines of that. No, I get
Yep.
you. But speaking of racing, where is it? The Zenvo Aurora is coming
Oh,
soon with its own bespoke engine called the Mjolnir. Reminds me of
well,
Thor,
I like
obviously.
anything with the Aurora name because the Oldsmobile. I used to have one, and so that
You ever heard of
yeah,
a?
that was not the
You
same.
ever heard of a 18? No, was it 1,850 horsepower quad turbo V12?
What I do see, I see something interesting right there. Yeah, I see Mali or male. Male, I don't know if I
Mali.
said that right.
It's co-developed
Yeah.
with Mali.
I know I have with their oil pump.
It
I know I want their
is
piston.
a so the engine is a 6.6 liter quad turbo inside the V 90-degree V12.
Wow.
How do I say?
That's interesting.
I personally will go just twin turbo, but I do
I
like.
see what they're doing though. It's smart.
It looks nice, like packaging wise.
It's smart. Because you know why I say smart? I mean, it's kind of like how it's just it's typical European design, I guess. Hot V one, two. It's like how BMW with the inline, they kind of when they were doing twin turbo, they have three and three. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They separated, so it kind of makes sense. So they just took three, 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 and so they're like, perfect.
I think they were just better off with two big singles, but you're inside the V, so I guess I get it. You need a quads, but I kind of expect a little to be a little different arrangement than all of them facing forward if it's going to be like that.
Makes sense. All they gotta
Three
do is now put an intake that shoots air right into it.
oh, costs just a merely $3 million,
Makes sense.
and their
It makes sense.
and their thing is Mjolnir was only ever forged to be wielded by a select few, which is that's actually nice marketing. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, no, it is. And it makes sense. It redlines at 9,800 RPM. That's almost 10,000 right there.
Yep, it has in
6.6 liters.
and this is what I'm saying. 1,250 horsepower, and then the electric does the extra six. So it's like, why not just
Yeah,
do two big singles, and you would have probably had that power already.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All this electrification, electric, electric,
Yeah.
electric.
So, you know what? This car is cool and all, but guess what? Now with reading that, guess what car I'm just gonna wait for then at that point.
What's that?
The Zora Corvette.
Oh yeah, for sure. I
Because they're
think
probably just gonna, I guess,
didn't they just confirm they're putting an electric motor in the front?
it's just gonna be the same E-race setup. And
Mm.
so my mind says okay, because I think it's just gonna slow it down and throw the weight off. But at the same time,
It could make it
it,
faster
uh,
though.
it could make it faster if they put. I feel like they're gonna have to put stronger motors than what's in the E-Ray, and eventually maybe upgrade the motors that are what's in the E-Ray. Like I feel like they're gonna have to figure out how to make it where if the E-Ray is only doing 160, they're gonna have to make that at least do 300.
All I'm saying is they should have made it all-wheel drive with the through shaft, like the Audis and the Lamborghinis, and then put the hybrid system in between the engine and trans and run an MGU. So take the alternator out, run an MGU, make that hybrid. So you have to run a big
That's
ass battery pack. You could just run like a small charge pack to where you just if you need to overtake, bing,
Yeah, it's true. That's true. But see, they want to make it where you can actually drive it, like Sunday drive it.
it'll be all mechanical. And then when you want that extra boost, there you have it.
See, this thing they're trying to make it where you'll literally just
But
you go to a parking lot and
again, like I was talking about earlier, from an engineering perspective, I understand. Although I don't like it, I understand because they already have it there, so they're just gonna find a way to sandwich it all together, which is annoying that people don't push the limits of these cars in different ways. But I get it. I
yeah,
get it.
everybody's playing it safe. Everybody's playing it
It
safe.
is so annoying. Why? Like, why choose the like Cadillac to go into ventures of world endurance racing. Now they're climbing. Now they're climbing into Formula One. Ford's coming back into Formula One. They're trying to do their own thing with the GTD. Like, why is everyone saying, "Oh, they're playing it safe, blah blah," and then in their interviews, we're gonna push the boundaries and do this and da da da. No,
They
you know,
play it safe with the production cars. With the race cars, they have fun. And that's how. That's why.
you don't have to play
They
it safe
they
with the
they the
production
bean
car.
the bean counters don't let them. I
Yeah,
said
they
it.
do. Yeah, they do. Because
Nope.
I guarantee
The
you, every
bean
one of those,
counters,
I guarantee you, the first one of those ZR1s are already sold out. Just because it's
those
cheaper than a
the bean
GTD.
counters.
Just because it's cheaper than a GTD, I guarantee you, the first one of those ZR1s are
Oh, of
the
course.
are sold out.
Just because of that alone, yes, I agree. But the bean counters don't let them make the other cars that we want. They're letting them make the ultimate cars now, but
I'm telling you,
they're not letting us.
you put a through shaft and a light enough dip up front with axles, save you a whole bunch of weight.
This is you remember this is coming from the same company that I just found out that use leaf springs in their Corvettes for the C5, C6, and
Seven.
C7, and I'm just kind of appalled. But at the same time, I'm like, okay,
Well, that's why everyone ditches them
I'm
with those
impressed.
coilovers.
That's why I'm like I'm impressed, but I'm like, oh,
Hey,
I'm like, you literally took my truck, right, suspension and went this way. You just went it, made it sideways and said, oh,
it connects to
yeah.
both sides and it bolts right in the middle.
They're like, we can go fast. I was like, they're like, yeah, look, his guys, the handle's good on the track. Yeah, no wonder why. I think it's a death trap.
Oh
Not
man.
really, but I get why I get the engineering behind it, but I'm like, how does a Corvette handle bumps? I bet not so well at all.
Oh man, the technology behind these cars, I just wish they pushed it further. But speaking of pushing further technology,
Yes.
new car performance tech, electro hydraulic suspension by wire now. So it's I think does McLaren does that, right? That's why they don't rock a sway bar. They have the whole hydraulic
Um,
suspension thing.
yeah, so they're using GM's Magnaride, I believe, or that might be
Really?
Ferrari. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if everybody's using GM's Magnaride right now. Or it might be McLaren might be using their own, so I might be mistaken.
So let's see. What if hydraulic
Who
pressure was generated and
uses
managed right where it was needed using tiny high precision electric pumps, valves, and accumulators? Kind of the opposite of what's happening to onboard computing, where cars are transitioned away from dozens of hundreds of tiny computers to a centralized computer module. Electrons are lighter than oil molecules, and as are the pipes they run in, so why not connect suspension control corners electrically and electronically while isolating the oil to precisely where it's needed? Dahlman already supplies electrohydraulic actuators for theme park animatronics, marine diesel engines, plus timber processing, injection molding, and die casting equipment. Now it's looking to break into aviation and automobiles, and a Boeing 777, Dahlman claims switching to its actuators could eliminate 1.2 miles of hydraulic pipes, saving 2,200 pounds of weight and halving the actuation energy expended. And car suspensions are promised as a low energy, active, adaptive, height adjustable suspension that is light and affordable. How it works? Let's break it down. Spring damper, anti roll control, and ride height systems are replaced by a single strut at each corner. That's a lot of weight savings. Each strut is
hmm
equipped with a variable orifice, high precision dampening valve controlled by a brushless DC motor, several accumulators, and a small radial piston hydraulic pump. That first dampening valve delivers a wide range of authority, as do many other adaptive systems, with the difference being that here each strut continuously monitors the vertical velocity of its wheel corner sorry, and the valve has benchmark speeds precisions. 2 millisecond actuation with 99.9% positional accuracy. Several gas springs accumulators bear the vehicle load, offering various spring rates depending on which and how many accumulators are open to the hydraulic circuit. The valves connecting to these accumulators operate at 2 millisecond speeds, after which holding any given spring rate requires no further energy. That's crazy.
Hmm. That's actually, yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. That's actually interesting technology because now it makes sense. At first, I'm like, oh, it's like Magna Ride, but this is on a whole nother level.
So let's see the
But it makes sense.
advantages. The valve speed and accuracy claimed to be the highest performing on the market today, coupled with the onboard wheel velocity monitoring means most road irregularities can be smoothed out without the need for expensive advanced sensing of the surface ahead. The active pressure function can effectively replace costly heavy active or passive roll or pitch control devices. The strut also effectively measures force so they can inform the central computer about passenger and payload mass, trailer tongue weight, and the effectiveness of aerodynamic downforce aids. Relative to most other mainstream hydraulic suspensions, Dahlman's operating pressure is about 5 times higher, 150 bar versus 15 to 30, which allows its parts to be smaller and lighter. The valve reaction time of both an order of magnitude quicker, 2 to 3 milliseconds versus 50, and more accurately, plus or minus 0.1% relative to as much as plus or minus 30%. Average power consumption is also expected to be an order of magnitude less, especially relative to active systems such as the Multimatic Ferrari F80 system or the Clear Motion setup Neo uses in China. Multimatic systems need liquid cooling, Dahlman's corners don't. Wow.
Hmm.
Is planned to demonstrate the system in the Aston Martin DBX 707 funded by UK grant, but the British boutique
Oh,
firm will not develop it further. B sample parts are now being developed for a large German OEM to test. However, and a hypercar manufacturer plans to go on the market in 2028 using Dahlman corners. The system reminded me of this is the author himself. This system reminded me of the electromechanical suspension Bose demonstrated by making a Lexus LS leap over an obstacle on the road. So I asked Jones if this system could do that trick too, while noting this steeplechase use of case is nonsensical in the real world. He reckoned it likely powerful enough to swing it. Then he mentioned a vastly more useful party trick. When approaching the edge of a pothole, suddenly dumping all spring pressure could cause the air pressure in that tire to bounce it up and over the pothole. While returning the spring energy set it gently down on the other side, making for boring video but a sublime low energy ride. Here's hoping Domain's active suspension fares better than Bose in the marketplace. That's crazy. Imagine
yeah,
seeing the bump, and the wheel just decides to jump over it itself.
yep,
Holy shit.
yeah. That's perfect. That
That's
way, it's like
nice.
you're like, oh, pothole, nope, glide over it.
That's nice though.
That, yeah,
I'm surprised no one's
yeah,
went
that's
that
actually
route.
good. See, I was gonna say at first I was thinking was it a magnet, but I'm like, oh, it's an electric motor, which basically powers,
Which pumps
you know,
hydraulic pressure and controls it
yeah,
accurately. So it obviously needs some type of cables, but still. To
yeah.
take away all the hydraulic lines, especially for people who like you said use Magnerat and stuff.
Hmm. That's the reason why I like, for example, as much as I love the cars with that type of technology, they go bad. And then when they go bad, you deal with issues with the computer telling you either you can't go over a certain speed because my Cadillac had it, and then it failed. Then I ripped it all out. So uh, honestly, this type of suspension makes for a much smoother ride. And if this technology can
It
be
performed well.
adopted, if it can be adopted everywhere, the only thing we can hope for is that it doesn't get inflated ridiculously.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And we can only hope that, oh man, like we can only hope that like it's just cheap and not, oh, this is going to be a $2,000 suspension that's like this rig can do this feature, just because we see it in the
Well,
Aston
if
Martin.
they're trying to go
Oh, we
into
see it
the
in this.
if they're trying to go into the OEMs It might be the equivalent of like airbags and stuff. No,
That's okay. That's okay. That's an okay cost. Airbag cost is okay. It's when it gets to the cost of above that. Like you're like, you know, and I know what you're about to say. Well, airbags can get pretty costly
because they blow up,
depending on the route you go. Yeah,
especially in areas that change climate
climates.
temperatures like crazy.
Yeah. So that's why this technology is always good, but then how does it do in climates like New England or uh, the desert, or maybe even the tropical because it's gonna rain the water? Like it might do good. So like hopefully where they test it is in the mountains and in good areas because if they want to go the OEM route, we know OEM manufacturers, they have an act to really test their suspension, or at least they're supposed to.
Well, I would like to see this. I like to see this performed on that Aston Martin DBX 707. It's definitely a
Yeah,
neat technology. It definitely adds something else in the mix other than Magna Ride, hydraulic, air, all this other stuff. But
yeah,
it'll be nice. It'll be nice, new, neat, and if it's relatively affordable, I
hmm
don't see why it can't come into the market. And it's not, although it is electrical and it has a stepper motor and all that stuff, it still uses hydraulic function. So it's not far off. It's just way, from what they're claiming, is way more manageable,
yeah,
way more accurate. Let's say, and
yeah,
it has better corrections and percentage of accuracies and deltas and stuff like that. So way better too. By like they're saying less than zero point 0.1 of a millisecond, while the closest they can get to it as far as a market standpoint is 30. God damn, that's a crazy leap. So, speaking of new technologies, let's get back into some of the old with Ferrari still building a manual transmission. Well, supposedly, they might have not built the last stick shift sports car. They might be going back to it. Ferrari might consider bringing back the manual transmission, says the company's chief product development officer, Gianmaria Forgenzi. It's something that could be in the future depending on the product. So that doesn't mean we might see stick shift versions of Ferraris like the mid-engine 296 GTP or the front-engine Dodici Cilindri. However, while Fulgenzi acknowledged some customers have asked for the Ferrari with a manual transmission, he empathetically ruled out any possibility Maranello will follow the lead set by Porsche with its new 911T and introduce a manual transmission variant of the mainstream model. The last Ferrari offered with the manual was a 2012 California, and since then Ferrari has only offered cars equipped with the dual clutch trans. And Fulgenzi made it clear that is not about to change. For a performance car, the manual transmission is not something you want. He said, when you have your hands on the wheel and you can use paddles, there's nothing better than that. And he said kept saying nothing, nothing, nothing. If Ferrari does bring back the manual, it will likely appear in one of the company's high-end limited edition Icona models. Fulgenzi said, if we're talking about an Icona car, it could happen because it's a car that represents a heritage to be admired, to be driven in a certain way. So that sounds like Daytona SP3 territory, which I'm actually reading, and it might be Icona cars built so far: front engine Mazda SP1 and SP2, and a mid engine Daytona SP3, all of which commanded $2 million plus price tags, took themes and concepts from Ferraris of the past and reinterpreted them in a modern way using clever repackaging, hardware from existing models. Icona cars have become a fourth model stream for Ferrari alongside sports cars, the GTs, and the special hypercars. In a highly lucrative one, all 599 Daytona SP3s were quickly snapped up by eager collectors, generating more than $1.3 billion in revenue. With Ferrari's marketing chief, Enrico Giaretta, has already announced Ferrari would do more iconic cars. We have no idea that what the next will be, he told Motor Trend in 2022. Though I think you can easily identify 4 or 5 strong concepts we could work with. How about a modern take on a 250 GT SWB? with a manual transmission. That'll be nice to bring back the
Yeah,
250. The Le Mans Renner, the OG OG. That sucks
yeah.
though. I kind of
That actually would be. That'd be nice if they did that.
I do like it, but I don't like the fact that it has to be a special icon
Addition.
car. Like it's there, because now they have a lineup. I don't know if you ever looked at Ferrari's website. They have
Hmm.
the cars they're selling, the hypercar section, and they have an Icona section, which is cars that they're building to modernize that uh, remnants of the past type ordeal.
I see. Yeah.
So I'll pull it up right now. Here we go. If you go to is it all models? Yep. You go to all models. You got the Range series, the Special series, the Icona series, which is the Daytona SP3, and the Monza SP1 and SP2. Then you got the supercars, which is just dating all their supercars to this very point, and the GT
Hmm.
Racing, which is the 296, and then they have a past model section, which brings you to a whole nother area where it starts in 1947 all the way down.
Oh wow.
That's why I said it would be cool to bring back the 250.
Yeah. They would have something there.
Oh, for sure. Let me see. All models. Because the GTO. Yeah, GTO. Oh, they could bring back the GTO too. Shit. No, they wouldn't do that because that's one of their first iconic cars. No, I like it, but I don't like the fact that you have to. It's gonna be one of those iconic cars, and more likely it's gonna be $2 million versus like let's say they build another version of the 296, or like they build a newer version of it, and then make it stick shift. Like that would be pretty cool. Like spend $400,000 or $500,000 if anyone has that type of money to get something like that. And it will especially rival, like you said, the Porsche with this new 911T.
Yeah.
But I know Blake got that money. I don't.
Mm, nope. Mm-mm.
Looking
But if
around
you
like
do see you at a Ferrari, uh, answer the questions.
I'll pay you $5 for your
Nah,
Ferrari.
I got you. It's gonna
Fucking
be a
hell, man.
body kit Ferrari. It's
Well,
gonna be a Fiero Ferrari. It's
yeah, the kit cars. God, I love the kit car craze.
gonna be a Fiero. You're like, this is not a 250.
Oh man. Although,
Talk
nah.
about
I just wish I wish more cars tapped into that, but
the
I can't.
heritage.
Well, not only that, just building, still having a manual option. Like BMW hasn't gone far away from it, and they've been building the M car for how long? Like I
Hmm.
get it, it's more exhilarating. There's more control, but more control you have to be about when you're driving the vehicle. But other than that, I don't know. Whatever. I'm not spending $2-3 million for an iconic but manual option car,
Yeah, sure.
unless it's a
That's true.
Porsche Carrera GT. But then again, that's one off.
Porsche Carrera GT be nice. And then this one off. This one off. It's hard for me to want to spend that much money on a car because then I'm never gonna want to drive it on a regular road.
Of course.
I'm always gonna want to put it in the trailer. The trailer's gonna have to be like made out of thickest metal in case anybody hits it. The car is gonna have to be like strapped, like basically suspended at all four corners. So it's like it's in the middle hanging. So like, if there's a bump, the car doesn't even feel it. It's just like it's just hanging. It's just like that's how imagine that'd be a crazy trailer. We call it the bubble wrap trailer.
The bubble wrap trailer.
Your car is suspended. The outside is made out of thick like steel. It's heavy, so you better have a truck that can tow at least 10,000 pounds. It's gonna weigh 5,000 pounds of just metal, not including your car.
Yeah, I'm all set with that. I'd rather
Hey,
drive it or get it trailered over.
hey, what if that trailer gets hit or a freak accident?
Insurance.
Not the Bugatti.
I'm not buying a Bugatti.
I'm just saying, I seen some videos of before. It's like
Dude,
that poor Bugatti.
as soon as you buy a Bugatti, $1 million, boom, now it's used. $1 million off right away. As
Yeah,
soon as it
true.
drives off the lot. Let's say the Bugatti, let's say the Bugatti's $5 million. It's now worth four, and you only put 10 miles on it. Not even a mile. Two like 20 feet.
They gotta pay to play.
I'm all set. Mm-mm. Well,
He said, "No, I'm good."
speaking of Ferraris only putting manuals in iconic cars or cars they'll make one-offs of, the
Mm.
new, not new, what it could be like for a British designer to design the Corvette, which actually could look like a possible C9 candidate.
Oh yeah, the all electric Corvette. I seen pictures of this. Oh, more pictures, finally.
Yep, designer comes from General Motors, UK Designer Center.
Yeah, they were saying they what it could potentially look like, and it's gonna look like a space car. It's gonna look like a spacecraft.
It does look
I
weird
like it.
though.
I
Like
like it.
the front view, I'm not a fan of. I guess I do like the
Really.
bottom half of it. I'm a fan.
I think it looks. I think it looks sinister.
I do like the arches. I don't like this weird, like it looks like a prototype cockpit. They try to modernize it.
I love it. You know what it looks like to me?
Was it
The split window Corvette from the '60s, the Stingray.
the OG? But that's the rear window, not the front.
But you see, modernization, evolution. It reminds me of like an actual race car. This looks like a fighter jet.
Ah, okay. I can see where you're coming from.
Man, this looks like I'm about
They
to take
modernized the
flight.
Corvette logo, which looks nice.
Exactly. It's definitely gonna be electrified. And if it is, I'm all here for it. This is something that if you give me an electric Corvette like this, I don't care.
We're
Just
here
at
to
least
go
give us the
against the
option of a gas
electric,
one.
not join them. You sound like Anakin Skywalker in the third Star Wars movie. Supposed to fight against the
I
Sith, not
am
join them.
I am against it. I am against it. But we know just by that logo glowing like that on the steering wheel tells me it's going to be electric.
Yeah, I just wish they wouldn't go that route. But hey,
Like that's what I was gonna say. I at least give me the decency to give us a gas version, or make it where we can fit a gas engine, or it doesn't matter. Someone's gonna get one and figure out how to put a gas engine in it.
I feel like this would be like $1 million car at that point. Like the Corvette name would just be gone. It wouldn't even be a Corvette anymore. This will be like
This,
Chevy supercar.
yeah, unfortunately, you're absolutely right because if we think that they're gonna offer this at like $60,000, you're out
Nah,
of their mind.
it's gonna be Chevy
I would love
supercar.
it. I'd love if they offered this at 60,000. I mean, you see everybody driving around in battle jets. But, but that's not gonna happen. This would definitely be like 300,000
Nah, if it's a supercar, it's gonna be
because they're probably gonna give us a Camaro now. It's gonna be like the new Corvette.
True, 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 true.
They're probably
Alrighty,
like, "Hey, Camaro, welcome back. Beautiful car though.
for sure. But it has. You know what? It's gonna come with a twin turbo V8. There, I said it.
We can hope.
They're gonna do
Fingers
what
crossed.
they're gonna do what McLaren did and just shove that motor in everything.
If they're smart,
No,
they
no, no!
will.
Don't do that. Please don't do that, Chevy. I'm just kidding. Let me camera right here. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Don't shove that
Yeah,
engine in everything. Please don't.
no, put it in your Corvette. So put it in every single Corvette you offer. Yeah,
And that's my problem with McLaren. Like, although they do look nice, I mean, I argue this gives me like modern 720 vibes. Don't get me wrong. Like, if it was futuristic, let's say, not even modern, because 720 is modern. Um,
Mhm.
what kills me about McLaren is they use besides the Autora, which uses the twin turbo V6, they use that twin turbo V8 in everything. They just up the displacement, and that was it. Everything else is the same. There's nothing different.
I get what you're saying. But I mean, it's hard. That's pretty much the staple engine.
Like the
Like
fact that they're
even
able
this
to,
angle,
like the fact that they're able to sell any cars is mind-boggling to me. But
this angle of the Corvette right now reminds me of a C4. Just wanted to quickly say that
how do you
because
see
the
that?
C4 Corvette, the C4 is angular. So from far away and the two tone C4s usually came in two tone colors like that too. Sometimes
This looks more like a Le Mans prototype than it does anything else.
it does, but there's some in the wheel, the fence, just the way the wheels and everything is. It reminds me of a little bit of the C4 Corvette.
Hmm.
Not in this angle, not in this angle. The other angle just because it's far away.
Just because it's so, it has to be far away for it to look like that.
Yeah, it can't be up close. No, if you're gonna look up close, the C4 and this look nothing similar. Like there's gonna be only a couple little design elements. You're like, oh, okay, well, it's Corvette evolution, of course, but then the rear window is definitely Stingray inspired, and so is the front.
Hey, well, we'll wrap it up on the note of engines, actual engines, not oh, if the that Corvette went electric, I go for it. Actual, actual engines. Cause this dude,
That's crazy.
I don't know if
That's
you were,
crazy,
I don't know if you saw the dismantling of the V10 Honda put in their HRC YouTube and a couple other YouTubes that got that video and posted it on theirs. But they dismantled it. It was beautiful. Like the way they dismantled it, laid it out, everything. Beautiful, beautiful. But they're set to auction V10 parts from Ayrton Senna's F1 vehicle. I don't know how much they
they're
are.
gonna
If I'm able to
they're gonna
afford,
auction it,
if I'm able to afford a piston ring, I will gladly take it. Yeah, it was disassembled in the factory in Sakura City, Tochigi Prefecture, Japan. The people who pulled it apart were also the original builders, so you can expect extra care was taken. The parts will be up for auction, including camshafts, connecting rods, pistons, valve covers, and various other exterior and interior bits. They'll be put in a display case and sold with a certificate of authenticity, so you can brag to all your buzz that you own a piece of history. They're also trying to source parts from iconic racing motorcycles, Indy cars, and even vehicles from his heritage collection to auction off or privately sell. We aim to make this a
bro.
value business that allows fans who love F1, MotoGP, and various other races to share the history of Honda challenges in racing since the 1950s, says HRC President Koji Watanabe. Including our fans to own a part of Honda racing history is not intended to be a one-time endeavor, but rather a continuous business that we will nurture and grow. So they're willing to let go. Hmm.
Yeah,
But this is nice though. I want to get that oil pump.
probably put in the work. You be like, yeah, I'm gonna make this go to work. No, I was kidding.
Why not?
I would be surprised. There's gonna be somebody who gets it. They're gonna be like, yeah, this is actually gonna go get used. This is going in my build.
Or give me the short block. I'll get the short block.
Yeah, so I'm looking. I'm like, I'm like, it'd be cool if they auctioned the whole engine because I'm like, damn, they only give it pieces. I'm like, damn,
It's part of their racing heritage. It's part of the struggles they had to do to get into racing, especially with like the
I
OG
get,
Formula One and stuff like that.
I get it, I get it.
First
Makes
Japan,
sense.
first Japan manufacturers to win in Formula One, right there. Honda, Sorichiro Honda.
Mm.
And speaking of all these Honda parts for sale near me, Honda Civic Sedan hybrids, Honda Accord hybrid. That's nice though. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
Give me the short block.
yeah, short block would be nice. You could at least build something from that.
Of course. Or I'll just grab the design from it and make my own engine. One of the two. One of the two. But all right, that is a final wrap up. Nice, nice, nice. To end it all off, a V10s. We got the Noonan V10 with 5.8 liter. Can't wait to see that come out. They're responsible for Noonan Engineering. They do a lot of what is it? Billet Hemis, billet blocks, billet LS. They have their own billet Lambo engine, the 5.2 liter, I believe. The billet K series, K20, K24, and they have billet Porsche 911 short block. So now they're building their own engines.
Oh shit! Oh shit!
Bespoke. So that's gonna be our headliner. I don't know if you guys saw it through the day, but that's the headliner. But we gonna call it that.
That's what we own.
I am Rod. He is Sir Block, and we'll catch you on the next one. No, 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 no. It's not doing it. It's not doing it. It's not doing it.
I'm doing it. Oh,
Ah. There it is.
there we go.
There it is.
There
Rock
we
on.
go.
Alrighty.